My apartment was my sanctuary until my boyfriend and his ex-wife tried to renovate it behind my back. They paid the deposit for their dream design, but I made sure they got a renovation they'd never forget. My apartment is my sanctuary. I know that sounds like a cheesy line from a home decor magazine, but it's the honest truth. I worked 2 jobs through my early 20s to save up for the down payment. I spent every weekend for a year painting walls, sanding floors, and haunting flea markets for the perfect pieces. Every single thing, from the worn leather armchair in the corner to the mismatched coffee mugs in the kitchen, was chosen by me, for me. It's a 1-bedroom, nothing fancy, but it's mine. It's the one place on earth where I have complete and total control. Or at least, I thought I did. My relationship with Mark was the final perfect piece of the puzzle. He was handsome, successful, and treated me like a queen. He was a little older, with a son from a previous marriage, but that never bothered me. In fact, I admired him for it. He was a devoted father to his 18-year-old son, Alex, and he spoke about him with a kind of gentle pride that made my heart melt. I'd met Alex a few times. He was a quiet, polite kid, always a little shy around me, which I found endearing. I was falling hard for Mark, and the idea of a future, of maybe one day being a stepmom, didn't scare me at all. It felt right. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday night. I was curled up on my couch with a book, and Mark's name flashed on my screen. I answered with a smile, expecting our usual goodnight chat. But his voice was tight with panic. "Babe, I'm so sorry to do this, but I'm in a real jam." He explained that his ex-wife, Brenda, had gotten into a massive fight with Alex. It was the final straw, he said. She'd packed a bag for Alex, thrown it on the lawn, and told him not to come back. "He has nowhere to go," Mark said, his voice cracking. "My place is being fumigated. I can't get a hotel on such short notice, and all his friends are away at college. He's just sitting at a bus stop. I don't know what to do." My heart broke for him, for Alex. I didn't even hesitate. "Bring him here," I said. "Of course, he can stay in the spare room." The spare room was really my home office, a tiny space with a pull-out sofa bed, but it would do. Mark sounded so relieved he was almost sobbing. "Thank you." "Oh my God, thank you. It'll just be for a couple of days, a week at the absolute most, just until I can get my place sorted and figure things out with Brenda." A couple of hours later, they arrived. Alex looked even younger and more lost than I remembered. He was clutching the handle of a single, beat-up-looking suitcase as if it were a life raft. That was it. One suitcase. That was all he had in the world, apparently. I made him some tea, showed him to the office, and told him to make himself at home. He mumbled a thank you without making eye contact and quietly shut the door. I felt a surge of pride. I was helping. I was being the supportive, understanding partner Mark deserved. The first week was fine. Alex was a ghost. I'd leave for work in the morning and the door would be closed. I'd come home at night and the door would be closed. I could hear the faint sounds of video games or muffled YouTube videos. And occasionally I'd find a plate in the sink, but I rarely saw him. Mark would call every night thanking me profusely, telling me I was a lifesaver. But 1 week turned into 2, then 3. Mark's apartment fumigation was apparently a much bigger deal than he'd let on. There were complications. His talks with Brenda were ongoing. My tiny sanctuary was starting to feel cramped. My office was now a teenage boy's bedroom with that faint but distinct smell of unwashed laundry and stale pizza. My electricity bill was noticeably higher. I was trying to be patient. I really was, but my control over my own home was slipping away, one empty chip bag at a time. I finally told Mark we needed to talk, that this arrangement wasn't sustainable long-term. He was immediately apologetic. "You're right, you're absolutely right," he said. "This has gone on too long. Brenda and I are coming over tomorrow afternoon to sort this all out. We'll figure out a permanent plan for Alex, I promise." I felt a wave of relief. Finally, a solution. The next day, I tidied the apartment, wanting to make a good impression on Brenda, even though I'd heard nothing but horror stories about her. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. I opened it to find Mark, looking nervous, and a woman who I could only assume was Brenda. She was impeccably dressed with sharp, assessing eyes that immediately scanned my apartment, and her lips were pursed in a thin line of disapproval. She didn't say hello. She just brushed past me and began to walk through my living room, her gaze lingering on my flea market furniture. "So this is it," she said, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. Condescension? Pity? She made her way to the office, my office, and pushed the door open. Alex was sitting on the edge of the sofa bed looking miserable. Brenda surveyed the small room, my desk pushed into a corner, my books stacked on the floor to make room for his suitcase, and she let out a long, theatrical sigh. She turned around, not to Mark, but to me. Her eyes were cold as ice. "This is completely unacceptable," she announced, her voice ringing with authority. I was stunned. "I'm sorry?" "This environment," she said, gesturing around my home that I loved. "It's not suitable, it's cramped. The bathroom is dated. My son is a growing young man. He needs proper space, updated facilities. This is affecting his development, his mental health." I looked at Mark, expecting him to leap to my defense, to tell her she was being insane. But he just stood there, wringing his hands. Brenda pulled a folded piece of paper from her expensive handbag. She unfolded it and smoothed it out on my kitchen counter. It was a printout, a quote. I leaned in to look, and my blood ran cold. It was from a local contracting company. There were line items for a complete bathroom remodel, new flooring for the spare room, knocking down a non-structural wall to expand the space, even new custom cabinetry. The total at the bottom made my vision swim. It was tens of thousands of dollars. I finally found my voice. What is this?" I stammered, looking from the quote to her stony face. "I don't understand." Brenda gave me a thin, humorless smile. "It's the plan for the renovations," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, "to make this place livable for Alex." She tapped the paper with a perfectly manicured nail. "Mark agrees with me. It's for the best, and since this is your property, you'll obviously be handling half of the cost." I stared at the quote, then at Brenda's smug face, and then at Mark, my boyfriend, who was suddenly intensely fascinated by a scuff mark on my floor. A laugh escaped my lips. It wasn't a happy sound, it was sharp and brittle, the noise of something inside me cracking. "Handling half? Are you joking? Is this some kind of sick joke?" Brenda didn't flinch. She just raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "I assure you, my son's well-being is no joke. You invited him into your home. You've entered into a relationship with his father. That comes with a certain level of responsibility. This is what a family does. We provide." She said the word family as if it were a weapon she was expertly wielding against me. My head whipped back to Mark. He finally looked up, his eyes pleading. "Mark, say something. Tell your ex-wife that she has lost her mind. Tell her that she's standing in my show apartment, the one I pay the mortgage on, and making insane demands." He took a step towards me, his hands outstretched as if to soothe a spooked animal. "Babe, let's just calm down. Let's not get heated. Alex is right in the other room." He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Brenda is just, you know how she is. She's a bulldog when it comes to Alex. She just wants what's best for him. Maybe we can just look at the quote, see if there's a compromise?" A compromise? A compromise on spending thousands of dollars to renovate my own home for a guest who was supposed to stay for a week? The room tilted. I felt a hot, prickling rage crawl up my neck. I wasn't just being disrespected. I was being managed, handled, as if I were the unreasonable one. "No," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "We will not be looking at the quote. Let me make this crystal clear for both of you." I looked from Brenda's icy glare to Mark's spineless wobble. "Your son showed up on my doorstep 3 weeks ago with one suitcase because his own mother threw him out. He was supposed to be here for a few days, a week max. I opened my home to him, no questions asked, because you, I pointed a trembling finger at Mark, told me it was an emergency. I have fed him. I have given him a roof over his head. I have given up my workspace, my privacy, and my peace, all as a favor. A favor that has now stretched into almost a month. I took a breath, the anger making me feel dizzy. The idea that I owe you anything more, let alone a complete home remodel, is the most delusional, entitled thing I have ever heard in my entire life. Brenda scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. I see. So this was all just for show. You wanted to play the part of the perfect, supportive girlfriend, but when it comes to actual sacrifice, you're not interested. Some of us actually understand what it means to put a child's needs first. That was it. The final snap. All the patience I had been clinging to for weeks evaporated. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an attack, a coordinated one. They had walked in here with a plan, a quote in hand, ready to strong-arm me into submission. And my partner, the man I loved, was letting it happen. He was standing right there, a willing accomplice. Get out, I said. The words were low and guttural. Mark's eyes widened. What? You heard me. I walked to the front door and pulled it open, creating a draft that rustled the renovation quote on the counter. Get out, both of you. This conversation is over. Brenda actually smirked, a flicker of victory in her eyes, as if she'd successfully proven her point about my character. She elegantly picked up her handbag. Fine, but this isn't over. We'll be in touch about our next steps. She breezed past me without a backward glance. Mark, however, looked panicked. Babe, please, don't do this. We can talk about it. We can figure it out. There's nothing to figure out, Mark, I said, my voice devoid of all the warmth I once had for him. You let her come into my home and do this. You stood there and said nothing. I see who you are now. I looked past him, towards the office where Alex was still hidden away. Alex, I am truly sorry about this. But you need to pack your suitcase. You have to go with your parents. Silence. Then, I heard the click of the office door opening. Alex stood in the doorway, his face pale. You can't kick him out, Mark blurted out, his voice rising in desperation. He looked wildly between me and the open apartment door. You can't. I told Brenda you were on board. We already paid the deposit. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. The world seemed to stop spinning and just hung there. You what? Mark's face crumpled as he realized what he'd just admitted. The contractor needed a down payment to hold the date, he stammered, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. They're scheduled to start on Monday. The silence in the hallway was thick and suffocating. Mark's words hung in the air, ugly and unbelievable. Paid the deposit. The phrase echoed in my skull. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a plan. It was a statement of fact. A fact that had been decided and executed entirely without my knowledge, concerning my home. I slowly turned my head from the open door back to Mark. The pleading look on his face had been replaced by a deer-in-the-headlights terror. He knew he'd messed up. He knew he'd said the one thing he absolutely shouldn't have. You paid a deposit, I repeated, my voice flat and dead. A deposit for a contractor to start work on my apartment on Monday. Each phrase was a separate, jagged stone I was forcing out of my throat. It was to hold the date, he stammered, his hands flapping uselessly at his sides. Brenda found this guy. He's apparently the best, and he's booked solid for 6 months. She said if we didn't lock him in with a deposit, we'd have to wait until next summer, and that's not fair to Alex. And... He trailed off, seeing the look on my face. The look on my face was not one of understanding. It was a look of dawning, horrifying clarity. I finally saw everything, the frantic phone call, the fumigation at his apartment, the endless excuses, the weeks of him praising me for being so understanding. It was all a lie, a calculated, manipulative campaign to get his son settled in my apartment permanently and then to remodel it on my dime. They weren't just taking advantage of my kindness, they had a blueprint. They had a goddamn quote. "The man I thought I was falling in love with," I said, my voice shaking with a rage so profound it felt like grief, "conspired with his venomous ex-wife to renovate my home behind my back and somehow thought I would help pay for it. Is that a fair summary, Mark?" "No, it wasn't like that," he insisted, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Brenda she gets an idea in her head and she doesn't let go. I was going to talk to you about it. I was just waiting for the right time." "The right time?" I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "When would that have been, Mark? Sunday night? As a fleet of construction vans were pulling up outside? Or would you have waited until I woke up Monday morning to the sound of a sledgehammer coming through my bathroom wall?" I didn't wait for an answer. I was done waiting. I was done being patient and understanding. I walked past both of them, past Alex, who was frozen in the office doorway like a statue, and I grabbed the handle of the single, beat-up suitcase. It was surprisingly light. I carried it back to the front door and placed it firmly in Mark's free hand. "Get him out of my house," I said. My voice was iron. "You can't just throw him on the street," Mark cried, juggling the suitcase. "Where's he supposed to go?" "Honestly, I've reached a point where I couldn't possibly care less," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "You can take him to a hotel. You can take him to Brenda's. You can take him back to your mysteriously still being fumigated apartment. But his time in my home is over, effective immediately." I held out my other hand. "Give me my key." He stared at my open palm as if I'd asked for a kidney. "Babe, please, let's not do this. I love you." The words, which once made my heart soar, now turned my stomach. "If you ever loved me, you never would have done this. The key, Mark, now." With a defeated slump of his shoulders, he dug into his pocket and placed the key in my hand. It felt cool and solid. A small piece of my power returned. I turned to Alex, who was now staring at the floor, his face burning with shame. For a fleeting second, I felt a pang of pity for him. He was just a kid, caught between two terrible parents, but my own survival instinct was screaming louder than my sympathy. "I'm sorry it came to this, Alex," I said, and I meant it. "But you need to leave." He nodded mutely, grabbed a hoodie off the back of a chair, and walked out the door without looking at me. Mark gave me one last, desperate look. "I'll call you later. We can fix this." "Don't bother," I said, and I shut the door in his face. I leaned against it, my heart hammering against my ribs. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I slid the deadbolt across and, for good measure, jammed a chair under the doorknob. My sanctuary had been invaded, compromised. I felt violated. Before I even took my coat off, I called a 24-hour locksmith. "I need someone to come change the locks on my apartment, please. It's an emergency." 2 hours and a hefty bill later, I was holding a brand new set of keys. The locksmith had just left, and I was standing in the middle of my living room, surveying the space. It felt different, tainted. I walked into the office and was hit by the lingering smell of a teenage boy. I threw open the window, stripped the pull-out sofa, and started bagging up the bedding. I was going to reclaim my space. I was going to scrub every trace of them out of it. I worked for hours, cleaning with a manic energy fueled by rage and adrenaline. By the time I was done, the place was spotless, but I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. I ordered a pizza, too drained to cook, and was just about to sink into my worn leather armchair when the building's buzzer shrieked, making me jump out of my skin. My blood ran cold. It was Mark. He'd come back. He was going to stand outside and beg and plead, and I didn't have the energy for it. I stomped over to the intercom. "Mark, I told you not to bother me. Go away," I yelled into the speaker. A crackle of static and then a cheerful male voice, not Mark's, came through. No, sorry ma'am, my name is Dave from Premier Renovations. Your husband Mark booked us to start the bathroom demo this week. He said it would be okay if we dropped off some of the heavy equipment tonight to get a head start in the morning. Said you'd buzz us up." The cheerful voice on the intercom seemed to echo in the sudden, ringing silence of my apartment. Dave from Premier Renovations, the name of the company from Brenda's quote. My stomach plunged. They weren't just planning this. They were in motion. Mark hadn't just paid a deposit. He'd given them the green light, given them my address, told them I was a willing participant. He told them his girlfriend, no, his wife, would buzz them up. The lie was so audacious, so complete, it took my breath away. My first instinct was to scream into the intercom that there was a mistake, that they had the wrong address, the wrong person, the wrong life. But a different, colder instinct took over. An idea, sharp and wicked, began to form in the wreckage of my heartbreak. Mark and Brenda thought they could just steamroll me, use my home as their personal property project. They thought they could lie and manipulate their way into a free renovation. No, absolutely not. I took a deep, steadying breath and pressed the talk button. My voice came out surprisingly calm, even friendly. "Oh, right, Dave. Sorry, my head is all over the place today. Yes, Mark mentioned you might be stopping by. Come on up, the elevator is just to the right." I buzzed him in. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. What was I doing? This was insane. I should have just sent him away. But the image of Brenda's smug face, of Mark's spineless complicity, fueled me. They had started this war, but I was going to finish it. A few minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find two men in work uniforms, one holding a clipboard and the other wrestling with a large, heavy-looking toolbox on wheels. "Dave?" I asked, pasting a bright smile on my face. "That's me," the one with the clipboard said, smiling back. "And this is Kevin. Sorry to bother you so late, ma'am. Mark just said it would really help us get a jump on things tomorrow. We've just got the floor sander, the tile remover, and some of the demolition tools." "Not a problem at all. Anything to speed up the process," I chirped, stepping aside. "Just through here. You can put everything in the spare room, the office, the one we're expanding." They nodded and began wheeling the heavy equipment into my tiny office, which I had just spent hours scrubbing clean. It felt surreal, watching these strangers bring the instruments of my home's destruction right into its heart. They worked quickly, unloading dollies stacked with boxes of tools, power saws, and sledgehammers. Sledgehammers, to be used on my walls. As they were setting down the last box, Dave turned to me, clipboard in hand. "All right, that should do it for tonight. We'll be back bright and early, 7 a.m. to get started. Just need you to sign off on the equipment drop-off." He handed me the clipboard. I scribbled a signature on the line, my hand surprisingly steady. "Great. See you in the morning, Dave." "You got it, ma'am." They gave me a friendly wave and left. I closed the door, slid the deadbolt, and leaned against it, my legs feeling like jelly. I walked slowly to the office and peered inside. It looked like a construction site in miniature. Sledgehammers, crowbars, and power tools were neatly stacked against one wall. The air smelled of grease and metal. It was terrifying, and it was perfect. I spent the next hour on my laptop, a flurry of frantic typing. I changed my passwords, all of them, bank accounts, social media, emails, everything Mark might have had access to. Then I opened my email and began to compose a message. The subject line was, "Regarding contract 432, Premier Renovations." I wrote to the company explaining that there had been a change of plans. I confirmed that the equipment had been safely delivered to my apartment. I then stated in clear and unequivocal terms that my partner, Mark, had been called away on an unexpected family emergency and had left me in charge of overseeing the project. I emphasized how excited I was for the work to begin and that I had a few small but crucial additions to the renovation plan. I attached a revised blueprint I'd crudely drawn up using a free online tool. It was a work of art, if I did say so myself. Finally, I confirmed that the 7 a.m. start time was perfect and that I would have coffee waiting for them. I hit send. Sleep was impossible. I tossed and turned, my mind racing. This was either the most brilliant or the most catastrophically stupid thing I had ever done. There was no middle ground. I was playing with fire, but the thought of the look on Mark's and Brenda's faces when they saw my handiwork was the only thing that kept me from descending into a full-blown panic attack. At 6:45 a.m., I was up, dressed, and had a large pot of coffee brewing. At 6:59, I heard the rumble of a large truck pulling up outside my building. At 7 a.m. on the dot, my buzzer rang. "Premier Renovations," a cheerful voice announced. "Come on up, guys," I chirped back, buzzing them in. A few minutes later, Dave, Kevin, and 2 other men were standing in my living room, sipping coffee from my mismatched mugs. "So," Dave said, pulling out the original blueprints, "ready to get this party started? We'll start with the bathroom demo, get that toilet and vanity out. Then we'll start taking down this wall here, between the bathroom and the office to open up the space." "Actually," I said, taking a sip of my own coffee to steady my nerves, "there's been a slight change of plan. Did you get my email last night?" Dave's brow furrowed. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and his eyes widened. "Oh, yeah, I see it now. Project revisions. Wow, okay. Your husband is decisive. He knows what he wants," I said with a sweet smile, "and he trusts me to execute his vision." Dave looked from his phone to the new blueprint I had printed out and tacked to the wall. He squinted at it. "So, just so I'm clear, you still want the bathroom demoed. Toilet out, vanity out, tiles ripped up." "Every last one," I confirmed. "And you still want this wall here," he pointed to the wall between the office and the bathroom, "taken down." "Down to the studs," I said. He nodded slowly, still looking at my diagram. "Okay. But the new plan says you don't want to expand the office." He tapped the paper. "It says here, seal office doorway with drywall. Do not provide new entry point." And then this arrow points to the other side of the apartment. "Cut new doorway into main bedroom closet and expand closet into former office space." So, you want to turn the spare room into a giant walk-in closet for the master bedroom? "A closet, a dressing room, a private sanctuary," I said, beaming. "Mark and I decided we really needed a proper his and hers space. It's much more practical for our long-term plans." Dave shrugged. "Hey, it's your house. More work for us. Let's get to it, boys." The sound of the sledgehammer hitting my bathroom tile for the first time was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. For the next 8 hours, my apartment was a symphony of destruction. I sat on my couch, put in noise-canceling headphones, and worked on my laptop, a giddy, terrifying thrill coursing through my veins. By 4 p.m., when the crew packed up for the day, my bathroom was a hollowed-out shell. The wall between it and the office was gone, and the doorway to the office from the main hall was a gaping, timber-framed wound, ready to be sealed up forever. It was perfect chaos, and the best part? Not a single peep from Mark. No calls, no texts. He was probably giving me my space, confident that I'd cool down and come to my senses. He had no idea. The next morning, the crew was back, and they started framing the new doorway from my bedroom into what was rapidly becoming my glorious, oversized closet. Around 10 a.m., my phone, which had been blissfully silent for over 36 hours, buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "Hey, thinking of you. I know you're mad, but I really think we can work this out. I miss you. Can we please talk?" I smiled and typed back a simple reply. "Can't talk right now. The renovations have started, and it's really loud in here. You wouldn't believe the progress they're making. You should come see." I hit send. The 3 little dots indicating he was typing appeared almost instantly. They disappeared. They reappeared. Finally, a new message popped up. "What? What renovations? You're joking, right? You told them to go away, right?" I just smiled and sent him a single photo. It was a picture of Dave, crowbar in hand, standing in the rubble of my former bathroom, giving the camera a big thumbs up. From the angle I shot it, you could see straight through the demolished wall into the office, where another worker was preparing to seal up the only entrance from the hallway. His reply came less than 5 seconds later. It was just a string of furious question marks followed by, "I'm on my way." The text message glowed on my phone screen like a declaration of war. "I'm on my way." Good. Let him come. Let him see the magnificent, irreversible consequences of his actions. The sounds of sawing and hammering from my bedroom were a beautiful, chaotic symphony, and I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. I'd spent the last 2 days feeling violated and powerless. Now I was the one holding the sledgehammer, metaphorically at least. I made a fresh pot of coffee, offering a cup to the foreman, Dave, who gave me a grateful nod. "You're a real lifesaver, ma'am. Most clients either hide or hover. It's nice having someone who just rolls with it." "I'm just excited about the new vision for the space," I said with a serene smile. He had no idea. It took Mark less than 20 minutes to get there. The building buzzer shrieked with a series of frantic, desperate jabs. I calmly walked over to the intercom. "Yes?" I asked, my voice as sweet as honey. "It's me! Let me up! What the hell is going on?" Mark's voice was a distorted roar of panic. "Oh, Mark, I was wondering when you'd get here. Come on up. Be careful of the dust." I buzzed the door. I didn't wait for him at the door. I simply unlocked it and went back to my perch on the living room couch, sipping my coffee. A few moments later, the door burst open. Mark stood there, his face ashen, his eyes wide with disbelief. He looked like he'd run the whole way. Behind him, looking equally horrified and furious, was Brenda. Perfect. A family reunion. Their eyes scanned the scene. The living room was covered in plastic sheeting. The air was thick with drywall dust. The thunderous noise of a power saw cutting through studs echoed from the direction of my bedroom. Mark's gaze fell on the gaping hole where the office door used to be. A solid wooden frame was already in place, ready for the drywall that would entomb the room from the rest of the apartment. "What? What have you done?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "Me?" I asked, feigning innocence. "I haven't done anything. I just followed the plans. Your plans, remember? The ones you and Brenda so thoughtfully arranged. The ones you paid the deposit on." Brenda shoved past him, her expensive shoes crunching on debris. Her face was a mask of pure fury. "You can't do this. The contract was for a guest room, for my son. This is destruction of property." I let out a small laugh. "Whose property, Brenda? Is your name on the deed? Because last I checked, this apartment is mine, and my name is the only one on the contract with Premier Renovations. I'm the client. And the client decided she'd rather have a fabulous walk-in closet than a permanent freeloader." Mark finally found his voice, a high-pitched squeak of outrage. "You changed the plans. You went behind our backs." "Oh, the irony is just delicious, isn't it?" I said, setting my coffee cup down. "Going behind someone's back to make unilateral decisions about their home? It sounds awfully familiar. The only difference is I did it to your face, in my own apartment, using the very tools you so kindly arranged and paid for." I stood up and walked towards them. "You see, when you and Brenda came here with your little ambush, you made a critical error. You assumed I was a doormat. You thought you could bully me, lie to me, and that I would just roll over and pay for the privilege of housing your son indefinitely. You fundamentally misjudged who I am." Dave, the foreman, chose that moment to emerge from the bedroom, wiping sweat from his brow. "Hey, ma'am, we're ready to put up the drywall on that hallway entrance. Just wanted to give you a final look before we seal her up." I smiled at him. "It looks perfect, Dave. Go right ahead." Mark lunged forward as if to stop them. "No, wait, you can't." Dave just looked at him, confused. "Sorry, buddy, who are you?" "He's no one," I said coolly. "Just a spectator. Please, continue with your work." Brenda pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "I'm calling our lawyer. I'm calling the police. You've stolen our deposit. This is fraud." "Is it?" I countered, my voice dangerously calm. "Let's think that through. You and Mark hired a contractor using my address to perform work on my property. You paid a deposit for that work. The work is, as you can see, being performed. The only thing that's changed is the final design, which, as the sole homeowner and client on record, I have every right to alter. I haven't stolen a thing. In fact, I'm putting your deposit to excellent use. Thank you both so much for funding the first phase of my dream closet. The color drained from Brenda's face. She knew I was right. There was no fraud. There was only a plan that had backfired on them in the most spectacular way possible. Mark looked utterly broken. He stared at the newly framed wall, at the rubble of my bathroom, at me. But Alex, his things are still in there. Ah, yes. The infamous single suitcase, I said. Don't worry. Before the guys seal up the wall, I'll have them pass it out through the new doorway in my bedroom. You can pick it up later, or I can have it couriered to you, along with a bill for the remaining balance of the renovation, of course. Since you so generously handled the deposit, I assume you'll be taking care of the rest. That was the final blow. The thought of being on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars for a renovation they didn't even want was too much. Brenda let out a strangled cry of rage and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. Mark just stood there, deflated. All the fight was gone. I can't believe you did this, he mumbled, more to himself than to me. You should have thought of that before you tried to turn my sanctuary into your family's crash pad, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. It was over. I had won. Goodbye, Mark. He finally looked at me, and for the first time, I saw nothing there that I recognized. The man I thought I loved was a stranger, a weak man who had tried to play a strong woman's game. He turned and walked out, closing the door quietly behind him. In the sudden silence, broken only by the sound of a screw gun securing drywall, I felt a profound sense of relief. It was a messy, expensive, and dramatic way to end a relationship, but it was definitive. I walked into my bedroom and looked through the new doorway. The space that had been my office, the room that had become a source of stress and resentment, was now a blank canvas. It was filled with dust and debris, but all I could see was potential. Shelves for my shoes, racks for my clothes, a small vanity in the corner, a room that was entirely, unequivocally mine. I had lost a boyfriend, but I had reclaimed my home, and as the final piece of drywall slid into place, sealing off the past for good, I knew I had made the right choice. My sanctuary was safe, and it was about to get a killer new closet.